Hey, what's going on? This is Marcos. Today we'll be taking a look at the Falcon Eyes S30. This is a 300 watt LED. Before we get started, I just want to put out a disclaimer that this product was sent to me for review. So first of all, it's going to be really hard not to compare this light to the Aputure 300D Mark II because when you look at the box that it comes with, it's almost an identical design. The stitching, the rubber padding, just the design. When I put them side by side, the size of the box is the same. The padding inside is almost identical. Actually, the Aputure 300D has an extra padding in the bottom, but that's about it. Everything else looks right around the same. The only thing that really stands out is the actual light itself. The design is different from the 300D Mark II. However, everything else like the ballast, the wires, the thing that holds well, that is different. The yoke is the same. The other major difference is the build quality. This one is more plasticky, where the Aputure 300D Mark II has more of a metal body. It's more robust than this one. So before we get into any further comparisons, I'll quickly want to show you how this light works, how to set it up. It's very simple. You have two wires. One goes to the power supply, one goes to the light. And then we hold the ballast in place with this grip. Let's see, take it off. Oh, it has double security here, this latch. This grips onto the C-stand. Throw it back in there. Make sure it's tight. And then right there is set to 1%. If we turn the dial, this red dial, we can take it up to 100 by increments of 1%. If we press down one time, now we go back in increments of like very fast of 10%. For fine tuning, you press once, now you go in increments of 1%. There. Right now I have this reflector on, I'm gonna take it off. Now you see it's a wider spread, you put it back on, it's much tighter. I'm gonna throw on a softbox. All right, now with softbox, I usually take off the light off the C-stand first. Like that. I'll show you how it, take it up to 100. There you see. So it has enough punch to still get plenty of output through the softbox. That's at 10%. So there it is, pretty easy to set up, pretty easy to control. There's really not much to explain. If this is your first time, you're gonna quickly figure it out. Now, Falcon Eyes claims that the S30 is brighter than the 300D Mark II. So I wanted to test this for myself, so I went over to my friend's studio to test it out because he has a light, I don't own it, and we ran some tests. And it turns out that, in fact, this is brighter than the 300D Mark II by one stop. I used my light meter. However, upon looking at the light, I saw that the output was focused around the center part for the S30. So most of the output was in the middle of the light, and then it quickly falls off. As opposed to the Aputure 300D Mark II, it has a gradual fall off, so there's more brightness level being spread out. So to me, this doesn't necessarily make it brighter than the 300D Mark II because a lot of the output is being focused around the center. It doesn't have the same spread. Now, this light has a TLCR value of 96 plus. However, when I compared it to the Aputure 300D Mark II, this one has a slight green tint, just a slight green tint. The Aputure 300D Mark II is a little bit cooler, or maybe it has like a magenta shift just slightly. And this is typical of lights. They either have a green or a slight magenta shift. One of the things I like to do whenever I'm lighting faces on corporate shoots or like I am right now, I try to stick to one manufacturer because I can color correct for whatever color tint the light has. I've done the mistake in the past of using different manufacturers to light up a face, and then you get weird tints. You start looking at the lights, and this one over here, even though they're both rated at 5600 Kelvin, this one looks a little bit more greenish, this one looks a little bit more magenta, and when you mix in the face, you have weird things happening. So you don't want to do that. You typically stick to one manufacturer, that way you don't have that issue. Now this light also has cooling fans at the bottom, and they're not noisy at all. They're not a problem for talking head videos like these. They're fine. It supports DMX and different lighting effects. DMX and lighting effects, I don't really care for. I almost never use them, but it's cool that they also offer them. Now looking at the Ballast, they look pretty much the same, but they're different. I would say that the buttons on the S30, they're a little bit more cheaply made. You know, they have these little buttons with the rubber that to me seem like they're not as robust as what's in the Aputure 300D Mark II. The same thing goes for the thing that grips onto the C-stand and holds the Ballast in place. That is not as well built as what's in the Aputure 300D Mark II. It's actually that thing, I know it will hold it, but it's not as strong or as well built. The same thing goes for the wires. Even though the wires are really well built, they're not as good as the Aputure 300D. It feels like this is a running story. They're not as good. And that's because you're paying $300 less for this light, you know, and so you kind of getting what you pay for. One of the things I look out for is whether the yoke can take on a heavy 48-inch softbox. Sometimes the cheaper lights, you throw on a 48-inch softbox or even a 32-inch softbox, and it starts coming down on itself because the yoke is not strong enough to hold it. With this, it's just at like the 300D Mark II. I was able to hold the 48-inch with no problem. I was able to make fine adjustments and keep exactly where I wanted. Very easy to crank, and it'll hold it in place, which is a major plus that they at least got this thing right. It's really good quality. One of the things that this light doesn't have that the 300D Mark II does have is a remote control. If you want to control this light remotely, you either have to use DMX or you can download their app. And for me, honestly, most of the time, I don't like controlling lights with my phone because most of the time I'm controlling my camera with my phone. I'm using the Bluetooth or the Wi-Fi for other things. And it's just another thing I need to, I just don't like using apps to control lights for the most part. I like to use a remote control that I can have in my hand, throw in my pocket, and do fine adjustments. So for most corporate shoots that I'm doing, interviews, I'm usually behind the camera, and then I have the remote control in hand, and I'm like tapping down, down, until I get the exposure right. When you don't have a remote control, you have to run between the camera and the light and back and forth until you dial in the exposure. I don't like doing that. I'd rather have a remote control. So it's a big deal for me to have a remote control. So that's one major minus about this light. If you're okay with using the app, then it's not a big deal. So the big question is, which light would I recommend? Which one would I buy, this or the 300D Mark II? There's a $300 price difference. This is priced at US $800, where the other one, the 300D, is $1,100. For the price, I would probably go with the 300D Mark II because of the build quality. Personally, I do a lot of on-location interviews, corporate interviews, commercials, this kind of stuff where I need to transport all my lights and equipment and cameras. So I look for products that are really well built. Now, this has a great build quality, is strong. You know, if the 300D Mark II did not exist, I would have no complaints about this light. However, we're in a world where the 300D Mark II is everywhere. I see a lot of people with it, and I know why. It's just the quality is there, right? You can take it with you. You're not scared of accidentally breaking it. When you have a light that's more plasticky, that's made more of a plastic parts, if you accidentally drop it or you accidentally hit it with the C-stand or something might break. So you're more careful with it. Again, if you're careful with it, no problem. You can transport it, it'll last you a long time. But if you need that extra build quality because you want it to last you much longer, because eventually something might happen, then yeah, you want to go with the Aputure 300D Mark II, pay that extra money. However, if you're, let's say, in a studio and you're not going to transport the light that much, it's probably going to stay in the same place, and you want the same output, around the same output, and the build quality is, you know, you want great build quality, it's all here, but it's just not as good as the 300D Mark II. And that is reflected in the price. If you only have $800, then you're not gonna go wrong. You have everything you need in here. You're just sacrificing some of the build quality. So this is it for today's video. Hopefully I answered all your questions, but if I didn't, or if you have any comments, please drop them down below. Love hearing from you guys. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.